Hello and welcome. If you're looking for evaluating the evaluator, you're in the right place. My name is Jean Fike. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Shauna. Back of the room can hear me. That's great. How about on the phone? Can folks hear me on the, it's not a phone anymore. It's very old school of me to call it a phone. It's a, what is it now?
Yes.
On the Zoom. They can hear me. Outstanding. All right. Well, welcome. For anybody I haven't met, my name is Jean Fike. I'm the Puget Sound Regional Manager with the Conservation Commission. Next slide, please. This talk was originally created for the Building Better series, and I'm going to give it just a brief plug for that series if you're not familiar with it. Next slide. This is, I'm sorry, let's go fast. This is, if you can go one more actually. This is a now every other month series. It was originally once a month, and we decided to tone it down just a little bit. So people are very busy, and so we figured once a month. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I mean,
Yes.
you can keep talking. They can't see
What's
your
that?
screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Pausing for technical. Just one moment, please.
Okay, we should be good.
Can y'all see that? Outstanding. Okay. So the Building Better series is a now every other month series, second Wednesday of the month, 1 to 2:30. Everybody's welcome. The topics are around management and leadership. So if that's your gig, or you would like it to be your gig, or you're just interested in the topic, please join us. All are welcome. And we want this to be useful to you. So if there's a topic you've been wondering about, thinking about, learning about, let us know. And next slide. These are the folks. So here we go. These are the folks that are working the Building Better right now. Tell any of us if you're interested in a topic or you want to talk about it. Please let us know. We're looking for good ideas. Maybe you want to help prepare or present a topic. Just talk to us. Let us know. And, okay. So this originally came out of the Building Better series. We tweaked a little bit for the audience here, but this is about evaluations for executive directors or district managers. And so if I could, both online and in the room, show of hands, like once more. How many of you believe that your manager is receiving regular performance evaluations? If you could raise your hand if you think that's happening. I've got 2 in the room. I'd say, yeah. How many we got online, if you would?
Yeah, which.
Oh, you're using the raise hand feature? Sorry,
Oh, there we go.
speaking to
We have
yes, thank you.
2.
2 online. How many, can you tell how many districts we have out of?
Oh, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 or 12.
So that's actually a better average than I would have thought.
Mhm.
So would you click one more? I know you're multitasking here. Thank you, doing great. Fantastic. So of those, how many feel like the process that you have meets the district's needs and the manager's needs? If you could raise your hand for that as well. Have 1 in the room. How many online?
None, yeah. 1.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's about right. So, so from my own experience and the regional manager team that I work with, we're seeing that this is often falling through the cracks. That either the manager hasn't ever received a performance evaluation, hasn't received one in several years. They received one, but it felt pretty perfunctory. Nobody was really sure what the process was supposed to be, and in the end, the manager wasn't sure what they heard. Things like that are really surprisingly common. And this is a really crucial part of the board's responsibility. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And I'd really encourage folks to maybe prioritize this a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of thinking and writing stuff down. If you're comfortable in the room, if you want to chat with a neighbor, that's great. Up to you. And on Zoom, if you would just make a couple of notes. There are lots of things that are important, right? I could write you a list as long as my arm, things that are important. Why would we prioritize this? Why does it matter? Why are we here? Why is it important to evaluate the district manager? Can we give you a couple minutes? I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to get you thinking. Write them down. I'm going to ask. All right, write down that last thought. Write down that last thought. All right, I'm going to start online this time. Anybody online willing to share what they've written down? Or are they putting it in the chat for you?
They're putting it in the chat.
Oh, great. Would you get
Yeah.
that out? That'd be great.
So we have one that says, ensure you're on the right track and following the plan.
Yeah.
So everyone knows the captain of the ship is going in the right direction. Make, mid-course corrections when needed. Allow for feedback, clarification, and growth. To meet the board's needs and provide input for the manager so they can adjust their approach if needed. Show support for good work, give them encouragement if all is well. Shows effectiveness if there's an issue or unhappy board or staff.
Great, thank you, Zoomsters, that's great. Any additional in the room? What else we got? Anything else we didn't capture with that? Jennifer, you got something else?
Yeah, I don't know how much of a repeat it is, but, get personal growth for the, for your manager, director, awareness of blind spots and pointing those out in a timely manner so that they can continue to develop, acknowledging their strengths and working on their weaknesses.
I'm going to repeat that back because that was golden. Tell me if I missed something. Personal growth for the manager, pointing out any blind spots because we all have them. What was the third thing?
Oh, and having that feedback in a timely enough way. So you
Right.
can work on your.
Getting that feedback, identifying those things early enough to make those adjustments before you've been dealing with that blind spot for longer than you needed to. Yeah, that's excellent. Anybody have this in the room, sir?
One other thing I would say is it also opens a direct line of communication between your employees and your board of supervisors.
Yeah.
Sometimes gets overlooked. There's no feedback there, and
Yeah.
board of supervisors can't be oblivious to what's going on in their own office.
Yeah, this was a really great point. Opening the line of communication, if it's a little bit challenged between the board and the manager. Sometimes the board isn't as aware as we'd like to think of everything that's going on. It provides that space and that opportunity for that clear two-way communication between the manager and the board. Is that accurate?
Between the employees and the board.
Between the employees and the board. Okay, hold that thought. I'm going to get to that in just a little bit. Thank you. Any others I missed? Back of the room. Of course you do. It's my boss.
Culture.
Yeah.
of accountability.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because often the manager's tasked with evaluating everyone else.
Yeah.
And you gotta do that on a regular basis, and you keep doing that, but it can be disheartening for employees to get constructive criticism and feedback from their boss, who is the manager, but they see the manager never go through the same process themselves.
Yeah.
Right, so it's a little bit of what's good for the goose and good for the gander. It's also one of the most important tasks for the board. In theory, they only have one person
Right.
to evaluate.
Yeah.
Right, and that's super important. That person is the tip of the spear of the staff.
Were people in Zoom able to hear that, or shall I repeat it?
Can you
There
summarize?
really good points. One, tell me if I've missed them. One, creates a culture of accountability that runs through the organization from the very bottom to the very top. Two, it's a sense of fairness for employees who are receiving performance evaluations, which may have some constructive criticism, and knowing that your boss is also getting some constructive criticism just helps that go over a little bit better. And third, it is a key part of the board's responsibilities. They have one employee to supervise versus the manager, who typically has more than that. And it seems a reasonable expectation that they do that and do that well, if that's accurate. Thank you. All right, let's do the next slide. Here we go. Okay, so let's see if we hit all these. I think some folks touched on the feeling of not being alone, of helping them connect, right? So I don't know, I've been a district manager. I know a little bit what I'm talking about with this. You report to the board, you're the one person. The staff reports to you, you're the one person. You are in the middle. Nobody else is in your situation. It can be lonely. You're the crunch part of a lot of difficult issues. And having that sit down time with your board can help alleviate some of that isolation and loneliness. I think it's helpful. It helps the manager understand the board's expectations, to your point, right? What's the board's perception of how the manager's doing, right? Sometimes, to the third point, the manager may be in fact doing what the board expects, but they haven't communicated that in a way that the board has been able to hear. And so in the course of a evaluation, sometimes that can be clarified. So it may not be that what they're doing changes, it may be just the way that they're reporting to the board changes, so the board can understand it better. And sometimes there are areas for growth, to Jennifer's point. Thank you. It gives the manager an opportunity to talk about things, how things are going, right? It's a two-way conversation ideally. It's both how is the manager doing, but also how is the interaction with the board going? You know, is there something maybe the board could do differently to help the manager be more successful? It's a two-way conversation typically. Of course, if the manager's work needs to course correct, maybe it's going great and you're providing positive feedback. It's also a nice structured time to talk about roles and responsibilities, to get into governance a little bit. So, okay, what's my lane, to Shauna's point earlier, if you were in her talk? Where exactly are the sides of my lane versus the board's lane? Let's talk about that, because I want to make sure I'm on the right side.
Are we going to get a copy of this, or can we
Oh,
get a
sure.
copy of
And
this?
in fact, it's being recorded, isn't it?
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, it's being recorded and you'll get a copy of this if you'd like it.
I
Or
would.
it's posted. How is it
It's
done?
posted on the Wade website.
Posted.
Thank
That's
you.
what it is. Yes, thank you for asking. It is part of governance, which we'll get to in a little bit. Were there other things that I didn't have on my slides that y'all mentioned? To your point, which I'm gonna get to. I think we may have covered. Thank you. Let's move on. All right, so as we talk about evaluation, I just want to remind us that an evaluation ideally isn't an event, right? It's a process. So there are these sort of three buckets or stages to the evaluation cycle, right? You're in the beginning of the cycle, you're talking about expectations. Here's what we're going to accomplish this year or whatever it is. Here are the kinds of things that are important. Here are the priorities. Here's the sort of level of accomplishment that I'm looking for. And then throughout the performance cycle, you're checking in, you're talking about it, how are things going? What's an obstacle you're seeing? You know, if there's any course correction, ideally that's happening along the way, right? It doesn't come as a surprise when you get to the evaluation. Hit advance one more time. So we're really talking about this third, right? When we're talking about the performance evaluation of the manager, it's just this last step. Ideally, all of the steps before it are happening also. And then you're carving out a time, you're sitting down, it's more formal, you're writing stuff down, right? It's that final sort of before you begin the performance cycle again. So we're really talking about that third step, but don't forget the rest of it, right? This should be happening as you go, just like it does with your employees. So I mentioned that this is part of governance in my mind. So just think for yourself for a moment, can a conservation district have effective governance? Governance is a fancy word for how you run the organization. Can you have effective governance in the absence of an effective manager evaluation? So think about it globally. The statute lays out the responsibility essentially to the board. The board starts with all the responsibility. They then turn and delegate parts of that to the manager. How then can the organization be effectively governed if there's no performance evaluation of that manager's work? I would argue there isn't. And once in a while, things aren't going well. And the board needs to know that and be on top of it and dealing with it. And if you don't have a performance cycle, things can kind of slide for a while and you can find yourself in a bad situation before you're fully cognizant of it. And just as a small point, we're seeing the auditor's office sometimes ask when there is a pay increase for the manager, they will sometimes ask on what basis you're giving this pay increase. Was there a performance evaluation? Let's see it. Oh, yeah, we didn't do that. So just as a small point, it really is expected that you do that. Next thing. So as you think about the next question I'm going to give you to think about, click twice on the side. For somebody else running the slides, I hadn't thought about it. For somebody else, I thought I'd be clicking at a remote. So think about as we get into the next topic, both what does the manager need in order to do their job well, and what does the board need in order to do their job well? Because both of those sets of needs to be met by your performance evaluation system. Okay, so I'm going to let you think again for another minute or two. What makes for a good district manager evaluation? What are the characteristics, other than it being a thing in the world actually happening? So these could be adjectives, it could be components that you think ought to be in it. Draw a picture, like any way that you want to write it down. I'm gonna stop talking so you can write. Got some studious people in the room still writing. How are we doing here? I'm gonna
We only have a couple.
go to the room first. Who's finished and would like to share what they have? Yes, sir.
So I think my first thing would be that communication, like, so your board members are involved, but your employees also. So that communication breaks down, the board doesn't know what's going on in the office.
Thank you. Sir.
The self-evaluation of the manager and the evaluation of the board,
Yeah.
are they cohesive? Are they about the same?
That's a great question. The point the gentleman made was when the manager does a self-evaluation and the board does an evaluation of that manager, how much of a gap is there between those two? That's important information. Yeah, good point. Janet, that's something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always great, it's based on your position description, so that your board is reviewing that position description on a regular basis, and so are you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then kind of reflecting on how much of your time is actually spent doing the things you're supposed to be
Yeah.
doing. And then also, I would say, taking a big picture look at the performance and or the health of the organization as a whole, and making sure that's captured.
Right. Yeah, Jen made two really good points. One is that the evaluation should be tied very clearly and tightly to the position description for a couple reasons. One, to make sure that you're paying attention to it, keeping it up to date and everybody knows what it says. And two, that what you're holding the person accountable to is what you've actually asked them to do and how to do it, right? So that's important. And then you said it went right out of my head just this minute. Say it again.
That their evaluation.
Oh, yes.
also capturing
The health of the whole organization, right? So it's easy to fixate on details sometimes, and it's important at the manager level to make sure that the board is focusing on what's the overall health and functioning of the organization, because that's ultimately the manager's top responsibility, I would say, one of them anyway. Yeah, others in the room. Shauna.
I would build on that.
Yeah.
In that, one of the really key things I found helpful in performance evaluations done on me.
Yeah.
Isn't hearing, oh, you did a good job last year. Okay, be right,
Yeah.
right? Please give me some specific examples of what you liked.
Yeah.
That I did well,
Yeah.
right? And specific examples of what I didn't do well, like, oh, that was crash and burn at that meeting when you mishandled X, right? Or that was really wonderful that that grant got completed
Yeah.
under budget and on time, right? So sticking to that job description, but trying throughout the year of evaluations,
Yeah.
to make some notes on those specific highlights and specific lowlights that you can bring those into the eval process. Because oftentimes that general, hey, you did a good job, it like goes right over my head, right? It's like, well, I think I did a good job, but I'd love to hear that the board paid attention.
Yeah.
To what those specific things were, right? That led up to that, you did a good job.
Yeah.
feedback.
I'm going to paraphrase again. Thank you. Shauna did a yes and to Jen's point, that in addition to these general things that are in the job description, having particulars that the supervisor or the board is making note of during the performance cycle, both positive and negative, but very specifically, because it's not, I mean, it's nice to be told, yeah, you did a great job, keep it up. Okay, but you don't necessarily learn and grow from that very much. If on the other hand, hey, this one meeting, I really like the way you handled this. This other meeting, though, that didn't go so good. Here are some notes for next time to consider, whatever it is, right? So those kinds of particulars, that granularity is really helpful for people who are trying to learn and do better each year than the year before. Thank you for that. Others in the room? David.
Yeah, in this day and age of virtual kind of
Yeah.
or in-person things and kind of combination, it seems to me that it still would be valuable to have this as an in-person evaluation.
Yes.
And I'm so new to this, but would you have all the board members there with the?
Could do. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, David's a relatively new board member. He's been an associate for a while, and he's asking, is it good to have in person for evaluations? I personally value that. I think that connection is nice, and as much of the board as possible. Some boards choose to have a committee. It's up to you.
And then, I don't know if you touch a second point, that maybe having an anonymous survey sent to the staff.
Yeah.
Be able to with questions to evaluate the manager.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We're gonna get to that. Yep. Are there others I missed in the room? Did you have something? Listen? What, anything new in the chat?
Comprehensive but not too lengthy,
Good.
timely and measurable,
Mhm.
positive. Inclusive feedback and confidentiality. Measurable and objective, measurable, but some open-ended discussion as well.
Great. Those are good. Thank you. All right, let's advance. Okay, so I pulled a couple of points, not knowing at the time I wrote this, if we'd have somebody in the audience. So when we did this as a building better, I had a couple of districts that have a very robust system built for their manager evaluations. And Jennifer from Palouse is one of the folks who was a like guest speaker in the middle of that one. Would you mind coming up here for a moment? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So this isn't the only way, I'm not saying it's the best way, but it's an example to give you an idea to think about. The way they have it set up is pretty slick. Another district to maybe think about is Thurston, but Jen, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, yeah. So our process kind of grew out of an experience that's probably similar to many other districts where we weren't having a regular evaluation. I'd say it did happen annually, but is usually supposed to happen in December. Sometimes it happened in February, March, June, July. So we just really wanted to create a process that was meaningful for myself and for the board, and then provide that opportunity for input from the staff within. So we went to a 360 evaluation process. And with that, as we have up here, we had all board members participate. We created an online survey is how we did it, so that it was easy enough for them to participate. It wasn't overwhelming. It was actually based on the position description. And then we also had any staff who directly report to me, which in our organization is all of our program leads. They participate in it, and then our key partners as well. And we kind of moved to a situation where it was, it was expected that this was going to happen at the end of the year with the rest of the staff. We do all of our evaluations for everybody in December. And I just started kind of working with our board chair to lay out a timeline. And we'd let folks know, okay, it's October, come December, we're going to do this, and lay out a timeline. And I know some questions came up last time of like, how do you actually make it happen? And it's like, well, we just put the timeline up and it's expected. So we say surveys are going out, at the end of November. The deadline is this date. We're going to review it at the December board meeting, an executive session. And just making that be an expectation. And then also, providing support to the board administratively to make it happen. So I could help by making sure it was on the agendas, working with our chair to make sure it was on the agendas for board meetings. I could help, the chair make sure he's sending out survey links and things to others, and just making sure that it happened. So, but it's been a good process. And, we spent a lot of time building it in the first year, but it's something that we can kind of tweak and use every year. And it doesn't take a lot of effort or energy to do it at this point. So,
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. If anyone has questions.
Yeah, we may,
Yeah.
we may. So a couple others I'll just highlight. Thurston has a nice variation on this. They have the chair actually phone and interview key partners so they can have a conversation. I think is a nice sort of variation on the theme. I've seen a situation where an RM it was a new executive director. The RM gave a survey to the staff and then summarized it at a high level to make sure that it was not possible to identify any individual, right? And then give that general feedback to the board so they had that sense of the staff. And then just like Jen described, for Palouse, Thurston has all of this built into their annual calendar of work for the board. So it's expected, it's known, it's not a surprise, it's not a one-off. Everybody knows this month you do this month you do that, right? Are there other nice tools that anyone's seen in the room or on Zoom? Examples, ideas that you've seen, maybe working somewhere else or anything coming up? Radio silence over there. Okay, all right. Let's advance the slides.
Okay.
So, and this is to your point, as you think about all these examples, are there any sort of potholes that you can imagine coming up? what are some things you might want to be careful about in this process? Maybe you've seen something go sideways. Maybe you've thought, oh, this could go sideways, whatever it is. Just think for a moment. This is unfortunately something RNs do a lot. What could go wrong here? But just take a minute and think about it. Anything coming up on chat?
Nothing on chat.
Nothing. Does anybody want to share by speaking? Is anyone raising hands or anything?
I do have one comment from Valerie, need to ensure privacy for candid conversations.
Yep. Okay. Let's start in the room. What watch outs did you generate? So,
So this is something that comes from when I was teaching, is there, make sure that staff understand there won't be repercussions, to be honest, because there's sometimes you get those staff members that they feel that if they're honest with the manager, there'll be repercussions. And I saw that a lot when I was teaching, and whether it was repercussions, I don't know, but there's still a parent.
yeah, gotcha. So if you heard that, if the board is asking for staff input, it needs to be done with some protection, right? Other, yes.
Retaliation from district managers against staff providing feedback and confidentiality is not protected.
Yeah, the fear of retaliation if somebody gives negative feedback against the manager. Yeah, any others in the room? Shauna?
Maybe kind of builds on what we just heard, so if there is a performance issue with the manager, it can be difficult for the board to have that kind of conversation with the manager. So sometimes what I've seen in the past, and I'll just say not in Washington, bad things were happening, but it was difficult for the board to have the conversation to address what was happening. So you can go through the process of gathering feedback and information and input, and then all of a sudden you have this, flaming pile of people in front of the board.
Yeah.
And they may not be equipped or have the skills to actually then take that issue and have that whole conversation with the manager. So I think that's really tricky. This is a place where regional managers can help a board have that crucial conversation, but I've seen things sort of fizzle
Yeah,
at that point and not go any further.
yeah.
I think that they can fizzle or they can get complained, something that wasn't that big an issue can also become a big issue in the board's mind when it was really only a minor, kind of micromanagement whatsoever. I mean, they react to it. That also could potentially happen with managers.
And sometimes the boards, they're friends with the manager, they've been almost family, they've known them forever, and they're afraid of hurting that relationship with their manager, that personal relationship in the process of evaluating.
I'm going to repeat some of this stuff back because I'm not sure if the people on Zoom can hear. So Shauna made a great point that, let's say you get information, let's say it's real bona fide information that there's a problem with this manager's performance. Some boards may not know what to do with that at that point. Okay, what now? What do we do? Like, how do we navigate this? And Shauna put in a plug for the regional managers, and that is absolutely something that we can help with. We do it. We've done it. It's not easy. It's not going to be quick. It's, but we can help. We're there to help you. We're there to support you through that process. And then there were a couple of points about, sometimes information comes in that's critical of the manager, and it can, it's important to evaluate it for what it is, right? As the board is looking at that information, is this a big deal? Is this a systemic problem? Is this an employee that didn't like a particular decision that was made, or there's a management style misfit with an individual staff person, or do we have a staff that's terrified of the manager? Like, what are we dealing with here? What's the level? What's the scale? What are we talking about? Any of this coming online? And then I want to get to yours too.
Conversely, some boards provide little to no supportive feedback to the manager. RNs may be able to help in that situation as well.
Yes, and that's very true. Thank you for saying that. And then I'm sorry, the point, say your name again, I'm sorry.
Weston.
The point Weston made, very good point. A lot of districts are in small communities and people know each other. And so sometimes you have a situation where somebody on the board is friends with the manager or friends with a staffer or two or three. And that can create tricky, and somebody's on the school board with so-and-so and your kid goes to school. I mean, it can be hard if you have to get into sort of employer-employee conversations with your neighbor or your I don't know, your friend's kid or whatever it is, right? This is hard stuff. And sometimes having that neutral, like, I don't know any of these folks, I'm not related to them. I can come in and be that sort of sounding board and sort of ask questions, sort of, okay, have you thought about this? If this was anybody else, what would you say? These kinds of, just that sort of neutral, and it's usually stuff, you just needed somebody to talk you through it half the time, right? But it's hard, we're human beings, right? We don't like conflict. We don't like to have those hard conversations. We want things to just kind of go along. That's just natural human instinct. So don't feel bad about it. It's hard. Get some help, get some support. We're going to talk about this. I want to make sure I cover a couple of these, but anything else. So this is the piece I wanted to mention to you, Weston, this first one. So that's okay. So on the one hand, the board needs to know if the staff is okay, right? You don't want a staff that's terrified of the manager or, is having some sort of systemic problem with the way the manager is working with them. You as a board need to know if that's happening. At the same time, depending on your organization's governance structure, you have delegated decision-making to the manager. That includes making unpopular decisions, right? That includes maybe hire, fire, that includes supervision, that includes saying no to things. And so sometimes you will have employees who didn't like a certain decision, would have gone a different way. Maybe they weren't chosen for a promotion. There could be people who aren't happy with the manager for reasons that are kind of okay, if I can say that. I don't want anybody to be unhappy ever. But as a manager, it's not necessarily, it's maybe a little controversial, it's not necessarily stellar performance if everybody is completely happy with everything you do. That may or may not be the mark of a perfect manager, maybe an ideal manager, but most of us as managers have had to make decisions that not everybody liked some of them. And hopefully we explained it well and people understood. But the board has to be able to sort those things out, right? And you don't want to create a habit and an expectation among the staff that if they don't like a decision that the manager makes, they can come around the manager to the board. You do not want that path being sort of beaten in the grass, if you will. That's not a good habit. You can get away with it. Some organizations are like that. There's paths going every which way. Everybody's talking to everybody all the time. And you can get away with that in some places until something goes sideways and you have a problem. It tends to work best if the manager, by and large, is the one communicating with the board and the staff is communicating with the manager, right? Overall, that tends to be the best, most sort of good risk management way to run an organization, especially as it gets larger, right? Tiny organizations sometimes. So when you are, as a board, making sure that you're hearing from the staff to make sure the manager's doing okay, be careful not to get drawn into those manager level decisions, right? Not to get drawn into, I wanted a desk by the window and I didn't get, making a silly example, but you don't want to be drawn into those kinds of things, right? As the board, that's the manager's job. So you got to be careful, and that's where these surveys are great, right? They ask broad questions, right? Yes, maybe there's a fill in the blank, and then the manager has to be able to trust the board not to get taken down a rabbit trail, right? If there's some detail in the sort of open text, if you decide to put an open text in your survey, right? The manager needs to trust the board's not going to Dawn's point, sort of make a mountain out of a molehill. If there's something in the,
Or
right.
create division between.
Yeah, right, maybe there's,
You don't work, and that, we've had that in the past, it's not big when they.
So-
Yeah.
so in an ideal world, there is sort of trust but verify, right? There's trust between the board and the manager, but also eyes wide open at the same time. It's a challenging balancing act. So is there more to say on the first bullet before I get to the second one? Yes.
I'm just gonna, I guess, maybe expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think one of the potential hazards is if staff are waiting for that end of year
Oh, gosh.
evaluation as an
Yes.
opportunity.
Saving stuff
to
up, right?
Bring up
Oh.
an issue or something
Yeah.
rather than work through the channels that are available all the time, like in our case, we have an open communication policy and we have our governance policies. We have a grievance policy.
Right. yeah.
Like, folks should be using those policies to correct or deal with issues in real time. Not just waiting for an anonymous process at the end of the year to kind of dump.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So that could be.
Yeah.
Be an issue.
And thank you for mentioning those other sort of pathways that I should have mentioned those. So, and let me paraphrase as well. So Jen pointed out that ideally you have in your governance structure, in your employee manual, a route by which employees can, at one end of the spectrum, let's say, report sexual harassment by the manager or fraud by the manager, right? You need to have that option. That's always okay to go around the manager if it's something like that, right? And you should have, spelled out ideally who it is on the board, what the mechanism is, but by default, usually the chair. But whatever mechanism, you want them to go around the manager if there's something like that happening. And then depending on your organization and how the expectations are set up there, but Jennifer was describing sort of open communications. The expectation is if somebody's having an issue, they will come and talk to the person they're having an issue with and resolve it in that way, rather than sort of save up a grievance and then anonymously submit it in the performance evaluation. That's kind of dirty cool.
Yeah,
But
it's like a work around the policy.
yeah,
You don't wanna-
it's not, that's not that healthy, I would say. Other points on the first bullet before anybody in the Zoom on the first bullet? It's a tricky area. So anonymous surveys are a great way to protect the employee. At one end of the spectrum, you can do it the way I described and have somebody, outside the organization look at it and summarize it. If you're really worried about somebody could tell by the way they turn a phrase, that kind of thing, right? So you can have an outside person take care of that, or just have a, fill in the blank, pick a number.
It looks to me like if you were to keep like a survey of just generics, rate 1 to 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave the
Right.
open box out because you don't want specifics.
Yeah.
Because you don't
Could be
want
identifiable. Yep, that's safest. Yeah.
Identifiable,
Yes.
or the chance to, you did me wrong in March and this is September.
Yeah.
But, just those general characteristics. Is kind of what I.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I've seen largely, and Jennifer's is like that. So there's, I can't remember any of them, of course, but there's sort of a question, this person is doing this very well, kind of well, not so well, not so great at all, kind of thing, right? So you're sort of, that's pretty anonymous. It's hard to identify anyone, right? So, okay, I'm gonna get to the next bullet then, and we can do a go back if somebody else has something. So, in terms of getting feedback from partners, can anyone see how this could go sideways?
Partners unhappy, stewards there, all of it.
It could be, but yeah.
I ran into this when I was teaching with a parent, just
Sure. Yeah. If you've got a grouchy partner, they can be the skunk at the picnic, right? And how could you deal with that? How would you mitigate for that?
Make sure you get multiple perspectives.
That's a good one. Yeah, make sure you've got a variety of partners, identify that you're talking to. You also tell your board what's going on with that partner. Yeah, so they kind of have some context.
And chances are, if somebody that's that unhappy with you, the board is already.
They probably know anyway, so you're good as well. Yeah, that's right. And you don't want your board to be surprised, right? That's the last thing you want, is to have your board get a negative surprise. Never a good idea.
Yeah.
So let them know the stuff that's going well and the stuff that's not going so well. They should really know kind of what's going on. Yeah. So the other thing, there's something like this happened when I was in Oregon. A board had not, it was in my district, but a board had not been doing this reach out to partners, and they said, hey, this is a great idea, we should do this. And the partners thought the manager was under investigation, that they were really in trouble. And it hurt that for a while until they could mitigate that. It hurt the manager's professional reputation. Never occurred to the board, wasn't their intention. So if you're doing something like this, just think about, how is it going to land with the partners? Have I ever asked them anything like this before? Is it going to seem strange? Are they going to wonder? Explain to them the context, right? hey, we thought blah, 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 he's doing a great job. We want to like get feedback. And so tell us how it's going, just kind of thing, right? But in email, it's hard to do tone and things. So just be careful. Just be, people's professional reputations are important. Make sure you're taking good care of that. Has anyone thought of any other ways that they can imagine performance evaluation processes going awry? It's quiet on Zoom. Yes, sir.
So it sounds like most conservation districts don't have this process right now. So if you all of a sudden have the process, well, or at least don't do it on a regular basis,
It seems.
so does that make it appear to the DM that maybe there is something that? needs to
Oh, I
start?
see. Yeah, and that,
Evaluation also need to be. Right?
yeah, they could. How would you manage that?
Yeah, I think, just top of mind, I would say to the district manager or have the board, at the monthly meeting or whatever, just say, we're gonna do this because I was at a wave conference.
There you go.
We had this
Blame
class, and
Gene.
it turns out that this isn't really done, but I think it's a good thing for both the district manager and the board to know. To have this kind of evaluation, every year. Something like one. Make it real vague and not
Totally.
cutting it all.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
Jen.
can write it into your, your governance policy. A lot of districts are just starting that work of actually establishing governance policies, and that would be an easy way to start. Including it, this is something we know is lacking as part of our accountability and organization, and incorporating it as you're drafting, so get it, and you.
Great idea.
governance policy.
Great idea.
Yeah, David asked a very good question. Following up on the partner conversation, might the manager think if all of a sudden we've been doing evaluations and we haven't been doing it, that, oh my gosh, are they going to think that they're messing up in some way? Are they going to feel on the spot? And the first thought was, well, let's blame Jean, because that's always a good answer. Please blame me for whatever. It's good. And Jennifer had the nice follow-up. A lot of districts are starting to take on governance work. They're starting to develop policies for how the organization is governed, which is a great idea. Recommend it to any district who's thinking about doing it. Please call your RM. We can help you. And that's typically part of that process, right? Is that as part of your governance policies, you have a regular performance cycle for the manager. And so it would just be a normal part of that and nothing personal about the manager at all, which I think is great. Great point. Thank you for the question. Yeah. Okay, advance, please. Okay, let's see. Oh, yes. So I want this to be useful to you. I want you to be able to solve problems coming out of these sessions. So you can go ahead and advance one more. I think there's yeah. So just take a moment, talk to your neighbor, whatever it is. What prevents an evaluation of this kind happening at your district? And what do you think would make it possible? Just think about it.
Well, it's not really necessary, because they just, okay, everything's fine until it's not.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, we should have been doing this. I think maybe a lot of boards feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to repeat that back, but before you, is there anything in the chat yet?
Yeah, we have a couple. Do you want to repeat that and then we'll go?
Yeah, what my short-term memory isn't what it used to be, so let me do that. So do you want to say it loud or do you want me to try?
Sure, yeah, I was thinking maybe what prevents boards from doing it at a regular basis is they just assume that that the manager knows that everything's going well.
Right.
And if there was a problem,
Yeah.
they'd hear about it.
Right, that we haven't told them there's a problem, so they must know they're doing well.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
okay. I can kind of see the logic, but yeah, I think that's common actually.
Yeah.
We do. Corey, something?
Yeah, so Zora says capacity,
Yeah, capacity. Sure,
but smart sheet templates really help.
Sure.
She says.
right.
Tracy says not having clear policy and procedure.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the governance structure.
Yeah.
And then in addition, just that the process and the scheduling of that. Valerie says boards not aware of how they can help facilitate the process.
Oh, great.
Share a synopsis of this discussion and encourage them to do more than just have the manager write their own evaluation.
Great. Terrific. Others in the room that I missed? Yeah, Tracy.
I was thinking either the workload of your manager then seems to be,
Yeah.
because they're too busy doing all this other stuff that one wants them to do.
Yeah.
The time commitment by both the board and then any engagement. of the board. Some boards don't engage much in this stuff, and if things are going along, it's the staff. manager that does it. Some are more engaged, whether it's in this arena or other arenas, so. Those are the three things that I thought would make a big difference.
Yeah, overall capacity, specifically the capacity of the manager, and then the level of time commitment by the board and the engagement level of the board to be able to dig into this stuff. Did I miss one?
No, that was it. Time commitment.
Yeah, It does take time. No doubt about it. It takes time. Okay, what's your advance? Did I catch the ones in the? You read those out, right?
Yes, yeah.
So just a couple of closing thoughts. Effective evaluation of the district manager is a crucial element of the district's long-term stability and success. You can get away without it for a while. Sure, people do all the time. My experience is until you hit a bump, and then you will notice this and you will want to correct it going forward. It is a it is core to the board's responsibilities. It just absolutely is. Your peers can help you with tips and tricks like you've seen here, right? Blues has a great system. Thurston's another one. Sarah wasn't able to be here, but Thurston has a really robust system. There are others. Are there others you like around the state, Shauna?
It varies a lot. I
Sure.
should brag on Toulouse is my top.
Yeah, Totally.
Top bar, in my region, and that's not been an easy, you guys can just like hit an easy button and boop, we have a 360 email, and it works perfectly, and then we're wailing in national TV for a while. Right? That was not easy, but, that's a good place to feel. Thurston is a good place to feel. Things too. I get asked a lot about, well, what does the state system look like?
Oh.
We got your forms and, oh, gosh, no, we don't. Our forms are
Yeah.
awful, ugly, and unuseful, and I
Yeah.
don't think there really even knows that. What Toulouse has is better than the state system.
Gotcha.
We evaluate.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you've been wondering, does the state have some wonderful fancy thing we can borrow from? Yeah, don't bother. It's kind of a mess. Yeah.
You know, that bad.
Yes, I
If
agree.
the state
Totally.
come up with something better, then
Yeah.
they better look into their own backyard and correct it.
Yeah. Who builds those for the state agencies? Do you know? I don't know what agency does that.
The forms that we get prescribed to us.
Yeah.
Commissions come from a combination of places. My understanding is OFM and Department of Enterprise Services.
Okay.
They kind of serve this stuff up.
Yeah.
To a lot of the smaller agencies.
But we could build our own if we wanted to.
I believe so.
Ooh, okay.
That is it.
Thank you.
Check their boxes.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought we were stuck with that, so that would be great. Yeah, we had a good point in the room. Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
we had a good point in the room. Hey, here's the state standing up here telling us what we ought to be doing. And the state has a pretty poor performance evaluation system. Yes, you're right, sir. So in talking with my boss here, we may have some options to improve it. I thought that it was sort of handed down from above at OFM level, DES, whichever it is. And that we didn't have any choice about it. We were just handed the forms. So thank you for that.
So
Yes.
Laura said Spokane has a smart sheet tool,
Yeah.
which we do, yeah, it's a self-evaluation
Mhm.
form
Yeah,
that then just kind of creates the opportunity for the conversation.
there you go. Yeah, Spokane's another one to look at, guys. That's true. Thank you. And then, talk to your peers, look to those examples for ideas. And then, your regional manager can help you. If you have a small district, you have a board without a lot of space in their schedules for this, you need to have something kind of streamlined. They can help you design something that will be the right size and fit for your organization. So don't hesitate to reach out. They can help you talk through, they can help support your board through the process in some ways, right? Make it a little less of a lift for them. So don't hesitate to reach out. I think that is it. Let's see. Oh, yes, and if you think of a topic for the Building Better series, please, let me know. You can let your regional manager know, they'll tell me, or any of the folks that, thank you very much, I had a slide. Or any of these nice folks here. And with that, one more slide. Yes, thank you so much for participating and being here. Thank you online, you guys were great. Yeah, and this will be posted. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.